How are we doing? You all right? We are starting off our stream right now. No wine tonight because, like I say, I've got a meeting in the morning. Not like nothing major, but it's a probationary meeting for my other job, just my admin job. So I thought it's probably best not to turn up to that meeting with a hangover. So, you know, so we're playing it safe. Hello, Katie, Marshall. How are we all doing? Hello, Foxy Femboy. Everyone all right? We all feeling good? I might sort out this lighting. It's a bit bland. We've got to get that streamer lighting on. Let's see. Sundown. That's better. That's streaming lightning. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Entropy 13. I'm glad that was helpful. So normally, I'm gonna move over a bit. So I've also had to angle my my laptop a bit because I've got a big thing of laundry on there. But that's good. Yeah, usually we have our wine and we start off with tasting the vintage of the Sainsbury's brand wine. But today we've got tea. I just put my thumb in it by mistake. So we've got thumb-soaked tea. Earl Grey. A nice Earl Grey. And we're just going to keep things chill and nice as we go on. This shirt, my brother gave it to me as shirts that no longer fit him. So I got this is a hand-me-down shirt from my brother who has similarly erratic tastes in shirts. I like it. It feels a bit like pajamas. Hello, Liz. How are we doing? Five. Yeah. Normally we've got the €5 wine. I'll be going down to Lidl this week, so on Saturday. So I'll get some nice cheap vintages. At an Earl Grey. Are we gonna do make fun of the way I talk? Next stream I do actually. This shirt is not far too tight. This shirt fits me just fine. The next stream I do after this one, I'll probably do it on the night before and going into my birthday, because that'll be my birthday stream next time, which will be fun. We did that last time and it worked quite well. I'm glad to hear that, Foxy Femboy. I am worried anytime a dog is in distress. I've tried Lady Grey tea. I like an Earl Grey better though, I have to admit. I'm gonna wipe my camera lens actually. It looks a bit foggy. One second. Did that help? We have no idea. Let's start by making a tune, and then move on from there. Talk about the last video, which has done extremely well. But we'll get on to talking about that. Talk about things that were like things about the video and shit in a minute. Let's do a tune to start off with. That didn't go exactly where I wanted it to go, but that's all right. I'll do for now. Do for going ahead with. Yeah. So, yeah. Welcome to. Thank you, Casey. Welcome to New Folk. We've gained a few subscribers in the past few days, so we should have some new folk around, which is nice. Generally these streams, oops, I've just highlighted all of the chat for some reason. Generally these streams are me slowly drinking a bottle of wine and getting slightly more belligerent as time goes on. But you know, today we're drinking tea and maybe getting slightly more belligerent as time goes on. I'm quite responsible, yes. I'm just a normal man, an innocent man. If it wasn't a probationary meeting for my job that I need to keep, like the way that a lot of jobs, I'm sure people have this in other places, but in case you don't, like, you have like a 13-week period where you're technically on probation before they can't fire you immediately. So at this point, I'm still in the firing immediately sort of phase, but after tomorrow, I might not be. 420. That's 420, is it? So yeah, let's start off with just chatting about the video. I wasn't expecting it to be the type of video that in the US they fire immediately lasts forever. Yeah, US labor laws suck. I remember some of my American friends getting their first jobs out of college, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've got my first job, $60,000 a year." And I was like, "Fucking hell!" And you get a whole 5 days holiday. And I was like, "Fucking hell, that's it? 5 days of holiday a year? That's incredible." As in bad. And then, you know, looking into the terrible, they can just fire you shit. Great stuff. Well done, America. Yeah. So the video started out was more planning it to be a kind of more blog style reactive video to that Politics Joe video that I put in that I sort of structured the video around, where the guys talk about the culture war being bullshit and talking about all that stuff, and then talking about the protest that I was at, and it was going to be more sort of blog style, just being like observing this sort of stuff and what's going on with these fucking Nazis turning up to weird transphobic protests, and then it kind of got away from me, but ended up being I wrote like a good bunch of this video. The cost of living is considered it's considered a personal problem here as well, to be honest. A lot of the way the cost of living crisis gets framed, it's all people are always talking about it as a personal responsibility issue. So I wrote most of this video with a terrible migraine, like the sort of migraine that like half my body goes numb, and like the brain doesn't work properly for a few days afterwards. So I was like writing this video and being like, God, what the fuck am I even doing? Didn't even know I was fucking writing at that point. And I came back to it a few days later and I was like, all right, yeah, we could do something this. But just I think accidentally, a lot of the balance of this video came out quite well between jokes and content and accessibility, and it ended up being just like a really fun video, despite being terrible as well, like about terrible things, and a good video essay, so I was quite pleased with it. I've also had the gyrating and thrusting bit stuck in my head for weeks now, and I need to get round to making a longer edit of that. I was surprised as well by how much people. I look like David Berry. Oh, tell your mum thank you, Alex Thunderbrand. I've not heard that one before. And thank you, Megan, as well. It's always funny when a video does quite well. It's been a while since I've had a video that's done as well as this one. And it's quite funny watching people go back, going back throughout back catalogues and seeing people. Some people get mad, and then you can see someone who's really mad at you, and going through your old videos and like commenting on every one about how you're a awful piece of shit. Fuck you to like every video. And you're just like, wow, thanks for the engagement. It's great. But sometimes it's just people being like, I really like this one. This is really good, and that feels nice. So yeah, so I'm glad that did quite well. Fits with the pettiness in the internet. Yeah, there's one guy who's really mad at me for the video I did about Peter Coffin's terrible book, and he still goes through my videos, just being really mad, which is funny. I've never who has the time, man? Who has the time to do that? It wasn't Peter, it was someone who had their face in their display picture, which is, people always talk about online anonymity being a thing that drives like meanness online, but people who have their full face and names in their profile pictures and displays have been, in my experience, some of the most vicious people. I don't think the anonymity is what's driving it. Lots of lack of community and late stage capitalism. It's bizarre. This one, a lot of the chicken run, yeah, exactly. Alex saying the culture war is a platform debate about what percentage of the population deserves rights. Yeah, I mean, there's a friend of mine has just written an article about how the culture war framing is really bad, because it's about material. It's like we were talking about, it's not culture and transphobia. It's not a culture war issue. It's fucking Nazis on the street. It's disenfranchising and committing systemic violence against certain groups of the population, and framing it as a culture war issue is bad. It's not good. Good. And with that Politics Joe video, which sort of sparked off this video, that framing really got to me. It's fucking bullshit. Used to watch a lot of I seen Peter Coffin's videos before it turned out it was just doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, I mean, I read their book, so I've done my share of shit. And I think people who saying anonymity drives cruelty online are generally pretty privileged people getting any kind of negativity for the first time. I think that's quite true. I mean, you look at any sort of newspaper and the sort of bile that is spread across our cultural sphere by any journalist. And it's like these people have their full faces and workplaces on display, and they're spreading bile. Who is Peter Coffin? There's no point looking into it really, Megan. They're just a former sort of alright left-wing video essay maker who's now sort of descended into what I would describe as wailing kind of right-wing attitudes, in a really unproductive way, pretending they're still a communist but doing a bunch of right-wing shit, basically. They wrote a book which was terrible, which I did a video on, basically so I could describe degrowth again. Unfortunately, there was a sound problem with that video, which is a shame, because people aren't going to watch it. But yeah, that was a bad book which should not be read. It's good to criticise other leftist creators, to be honest, especially bigger organisations which can withstand it, like Politics Duo, so I'm glad you did. Should have reread the script and thought about it. I don't know much about Politics Duo. I don't know if it's a person or an organisation. I think it's an organisation. From what I've seen of their stuff, which is not much, which is like maybe that video and another couple. I didn't realise that they were I didn't think that they were a left-wing organisation from the way that that video was composed, which was mostly interviewing big right-wing names, obscuring the fact that they were hanging around with actual Nazis, which everyone knew. There was no, they weren't hidden. Everyone in the crowd was like, these people are Nazis, here's who they are. We know this person, they've been here before, they are Nazis. This lady is wearing an Iron Cross necklace on her neck very visibly, and to be in any way responsible journalist and go to this protest and not talk about that is absurd. You cannot do it. It should be the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, we went to this rally where a lot of people came out to combat literal Nazis, actual Nazis, neo-Nazis on the street. That should be the headline, not the culture war is bullshit. That's not the headline for that particular story, Politics Joe. That's not the story. The story is not about how, everybody knew, everybody who came there to counter-protest the Nazis knew that the drag show wasn't on. It wasn't like we were all tricked in the same boat. The reason, as was very clear, the reason from everyone was about making sure these people didn't feel safe on these streets, didn't feel safe to harass trans people, despite the fact, as acknowledged in the video, drag shows are not necessarily trans things, but in the sort of right-wing imagination and the sort of gender-critical, TERF, transphobic milieu, drag shows have become folded into transness, which is, bad in itself and should be pointed out. But everyone knew that drag show wasn't there, and they were there to counter-protest the Nazis. And now you wouldn't have known that from the Politics Show thing. You would have thought, oh, these people all think there's a drag show going on, but there's not. And isn't that a bit silly? It's like, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Yeah. Where's my accent from? I am from a bit outside Edinburgh in Scotland. Yeah, Scotland. I'm sure that they interviewed a few of the counter-protesters, and I'm sure it was an editorial decision afterwards to focus on the right wing. I'm sure that was the case. I'm sure there was no accident there. It was all just that we've got a narrative we want to share. The reason that they would have focused on these two right-wing figures as well, that they did in the video, Lawrence Fox and vicar fetishist Calvin Robinson, is because they're both big names and they can create content out of those big names. So they can be like, oh, we interviewed Lawrence Fox, So here's a clip that we can use on TikTok. We interviewed Calvin Robinson. He's a big name. Here's a clip we can use on TikTok. We can't use a clip of fucking random protester 97 saying, "Look at these Nazis on the street, we're here to stop them." Because what's that going to do for us on TikTok? Not much. But these big names, they can be used for content farming, which incidentally is the exact same logic that is gone through Adam Bastani's mind as he's decided to interview Matt Goodwin. And we are going to get into that in a second. Let's catch up on chat, because I've been ranting for a little bit. The problem with tea is I drink it too quickly. Can't stay. Thank you, John Moley. Thank you. Oh, we hate Starmer, don't we? Yeah, it was just Raggle Taggle. It was just one woman, and I think that they briefly interviewed one of the drag performers. Very, very briefly interviewed one of the drag performers, but that was it. And it was far less time than they gave to Fox or Calvin Robinson. There's no reason. There's no reason for them to actually interview those two people, especially when. And I want to make it so clear: Lawrence Fox and Calvin Robinson were under no illusions about who they were with. There's no plausible deniability. They were talking with, hugging, and making direct contact with people who were neo-Nazis. They had no qualms about it. They didn't think it was a problem. They just decided, hey, these are our friends. And I think that's something that should be brought up if you're interviewing them. Have you noticed this person that you're talking to is wearing an Iron Cross? You know, this person that's with you here, he was arrested a few weeks ago for throwing a Nazi salute at another protest. Would you care to comment on these people who you're sharing a platform with? That should be the question that you're asked. And if you answer that question, you move on to, do you think that there is an issue with the particular perspective that you're promoting if these are the sorts of people who are attracted to your platform? Neo-Nazis, do you think it's a good sign for your particular project? These should be questions that a competent journalist would ask. And it was not hidden. Within seconds of the guy who was arrested showing up, everybody in the crowd knew. Everybody in the crowd knew. We all had links to the news stories. It was all obvious. Nope, nothing. Nothing in the BBC's reporting of it either, which focused on the sort of the culture war sort of dimension of it. Yeah. It was bad. It was a bad time. What's my opinion on the phrase culture war? I mean, I don't think it's a valuable analytic phrase. I don't think it speaks to anything particularly useful. I don't think that the current fight against whatever wokeness in general, as it's been co-opted by the far right, and the sort of current gender and homophobic wars, because that's what it is. It's not just about trans people, it's about all queerness. These aren't just cultural issues, they're material issues. And not just in the terms that they hurt the people materially, but that it's about the material the material processes and logics within capitalism. So it's not a culture war. It is a constant attack and reinscribing of the specific, of very heavy-handed forms of regulation, heteronormative regulation, and racial regulation, which are required for capitalism. Which is one of the points I wanted to sort of bring out in the video, that it's not just about ephemeral issues, it's about the regulation of the sort of core class social relations within capitalism itself. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome. Everyone go subscribe to the Leftist Cooks. And thanks for coming along. So yeah, I don't rate the phrase culture war as particularly useful analytically. I was going to say something else, but I can't remember. I feel like one aspect is that it's a way of lumping non-serious issues with deadly serious ones. I understand what you mean. I think that there's sometimes a way of being like folding in a whole bunch of different things, like saying, like the story about Roald Dahl books being altered, taken away of like some particular words, that was folded in with issues of transgenocide, as if they are remotely the same. One being the Roald Dahl stuff being a capitalist publisher making sure they can make as much money as possible, and the other being a group of people who are being attacked constantly. And I think folding those two issues in allows you to undermine the value of one while at the same time undervaluing, at the same time talking about the both. That's what I was going to talk about. Bastani. Thank you for reminding me, Michael Richmond. So yeah, this stuff. After I talk about this, I'll make another tune. So for anyone who doesn't know, anyone who doesn't know, so Novara Media are sort of an alternative left media company in the UK. They often produce good work. I've got friends who've done good work. My friend Amar just put out a really good article on specifically this issue of not using the phrase culture war because it's like a material struggle, and it's really good, and Amar's great. Constantly rate Amar, and they produce some great work. Unfortunately, Aaron Bastani's part of them, and recently Aaron Bastani decided to put out a tweet saying that he found the work of Michael Goodwin very interesting, and he was excited to have him on the programme to discuss his ideas. Michael Goodwin is a political science professor. He might have lost his job, I can't remember. He's a political science professor, though, who recently, very recently, as in last week, did a bunch of basically just a bunch of eugenics, about how different future generations will start to accept eugenics as like, that's a bunch of shit, like racial divides and everything. He's got this book, the about liberal elites infiltrating institutions, which is, classical anti-Semitic conspiracism, all this stuff. He's also deeply mediocre. He's not interesting. He's just shit. But what he is doing, is making a name for himself through the media, through the BBC, through the Guardian, through going on right-wing podcasts, and now going on Novara. And Bastani has leapt at the opportunity to interview him. Now he's used a bunch of like justifications for it, like, oh, I need to challenge this stuff, and which you can do without interviewing the person, or saying, oh well, he gets a platform everywhere else, so why isn't it good that he gets a platform on Novara? Why are we getting critiqued? All this stuff. And basically, the truth of the matter is that the reason he's being that Bastani wants to interview him is because it will generate engagement for Novara. And that's like, his colleague Michael Walker pretty much confirmed this is the case because he said, "Oh, people are criticizing this, but people on YouTube love debate. They love doing. They love the debate stuff. It gets lots of engagement, and people think it's very valuable." Now, putting aside the fact that something being popular does not mean it's good for any left-wing politics. That's just not true. But secondly, I don't think people love debate on YouTube anymore. I think that's behind the curve a little bit, at least on left-wing YouTube. It seems to be we've moved beyond that stage of content mill creation, and people are rightly pointing out that it's pointless and useless. And I like to think I played a role in that, because it is pointless and useless. But what it is revealing is very consciously that the reason they're talking to this person is because it will get them money. It'll allow them to grow, and basically reveals the structure of the media, even the alt media, as being basically the same as the structure of the mainstream legacy media against which they position themselves. And I think it's a larger problem beyond just Bastani and his nonsense. It's a larger problem of alternative left media. And I'm part of this problem as well, because I'm beholden to no one. But I have far less power than something like Novara, which has a big reach, has institutional connections, it's big names, write in magazines, write in newspapers, are invited on the BBC. They have a degree of institutional respect, despite the fact that they're invited on to be shouted at. They still have that degree of institutional legitimacy. But they're beholden to no one. There's no democratic accountability for this organisation. There's no movement to which they are connected. So they end up just replicating, because they exist within the business field of media, they end up just replicating the same tendencies that the legacy media has, which is a problem, and it is a shame. Personal dislike of Bastani aside, it's sad because a lot of what Novara does has been really good. But yeah, it's a bit shitty, and that stuff with Bastani is just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense to invite someone who for years people have been calling out as a far-right eugenicist, and then be like, hey, this is fine, let's interview this guy on what he thinks about far-right eugenics, and maybe I'll be the person who's like, oh, finally people will see that he's an idiot whose politics is bad, if I'm the person to interview them. That's not how it works. It's not going to be how it works, Aaron. That's not how it works. And the other sort of thing that came out, Novara thing that came out, was the sort of debate discussion that they did about landlordism, where one of their contributors, who's a former city trader, was talking about how talking about buy-to-let landlords as punching down, because in his view most of the buy-to-let landlords are actually immigrants, and as middle class people punching down at immigrants. But that's not true. In the UK, 88% of landlords are white. That's like 3% are Indian, 3% are Pakistani, and like 3% are black. Vast majority are white. And even if they weren't, that relation between landlord and tenant is still one where the landlord has more power. Thought it was me that said debate is the lowest form of knowledge exchange. Maybe that sounds like something I might have said. I can't say that with any significance. Should you stop donating to them? I wouldn't. I think it's. I wouldn't tell you not to stop donating to them, because I still do think that they produce good work. Like, again, my friend Amar's article for them is great. I think it's less of something that you personally have to do and more of an indication of the limited nature of alternative media within that's disconnected from any sort of wider movement, disconnected from streams of accountability from within a movement to which they're attached, rather than any sort of personal thing that you should do. I think it's fine to keep contributing to them. I'm not going to tell people not to stop contributing to them. They still do some good work, and I have friends who work for them, so I wouldn't say that. Sarah's saying, this was so funny, it's the best extension of the cop-out of no ethical consumption under capitalism. The idea that poverty is bad and therefore any action to get out of poverty is permitted. Yeah. Like the way to deal with this sort of issue of landlordism and welfare, because there is one very specific. Under neoliberalism, there has been a push to move people from welfare onto like landlordism and onto financial speculation as a form of welfare. It's got a specific name that's called something like financialized welfare or something like that. And that's promoted by particular policies, including encouraging people into buy-to-let landlordism. And that is a structural force which is occurring under neoliberalism, and that is something which has acknowledged and criticized. People who do it though are not exempt from criticism from the fact that they're fucking landlords. That's not how it works, because there's a structural encouragement to do a particular behavior does not mean that enacting the behavior is exempt from criticism. That would be an absurd position. It also doesn't mean that it's like okay that people are doing it. Like, I know a very obvious like point that anyone who's thought about it for a mere second could consider. And it just seems weird to throw it in to try and cover it in like these are mainly immigrant families who do this, that's not true. It itself seems like a weird thing to do. I don't know why that was a particular perspective that came out, but it's weird. Would love to hear more of your reasoning for not being an anarchist. I've heard some great criticism of some orthodox Marxist leftist ideas from some anarchist creators, like the Jared Forum podcast. I guess I still think that there are particular cases where the value of statehood is not inherently negative. I think a clear example is that for Palestinians, the establishment of a state which is not oppressive to them is an immediate demand which has to be met before the abolishment of all states in a sort of anarchist framework. And it's operating outside the bounds of the state is not an option within that context. And I think that's probably the case with a lot of colonized conditions. Generally within the global north, I find that the ability to capture the state is not something that's going to be valuable or necessarily possible in the short term, however. So I have sympathies for a lot of anarchist thought, but I still think that there is value in and strategic and immediate strategic value for particular groups in stopping complete eradication of them in statehood. I would find that difficult. I would find it difficult to argue against a Palestinian who was like, we need to set up our own state. One state solution where that's not based on racial destruction of Palestinians. I would find it a difficult thing to say. I think it's probably better to operate outside the bounds of statehood, because that's like the position in which they're already operating. So I would find that a difficult thing to argue against. But even like, I'm very, very aware of and sympathetic to positions like from like Fanon, whose point about the national bourgeois of a decolonized state becoming implicated in wider systems of neocolonialism, which takes a much wider reaching revolutionary action to overcome. Dav will say, my understanding is Palestinian anarchists are waiting for the state to exist before they start challenging it and undermining it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I think there's I have a very critical perspective on the state, as a lot of work I've done on YouTube. I think the most longest time I've actually spent talking about the state as a sort of formation, as in the video I did on Adam Conover's show. So I am very critical of that as a structure, but yeah, I don't think I wouldn't describe myself as anarchist at all, to be honest. Let's see. Let's catch up on what people are saying. Question: how do you build a more democratic left media org? Because we do need decent journalism on the left. I mean, I think that there are ways that I mean, I don't have any firm answers. I think that there's a missing wide party form structure in a lot of Western states that allowed for some accountability via sort of democratic accountability, not suggesting that communist parties across the West have necessarily been particularly democratic, but as a structural form, having a left-wing movement attached to a central party and allowed some oversight of particular productions of media and like newspapers and leaflets and stuff, which just doesn't exist right now. Perhaps it could be something that would be attached to particular unions. Could be valuable. Even media groups I know that are cooperatives still have some issues with like accountability and things like that. So that's about my underdeveloped thoughts on that, to be honest. Can I discuss the disparity between the organisation of the right and the left? I don't know, that sounds like a complicated question. I don't know if the far right is super organised. I think it's easier to appear organised when you're the far right, because to be honest, the state is, most things are on your side anyway. You can turn up to a protest, and what's it, I mean, at the protest we were at, it should have been indicative that the far right weren't hugely organised, because there weren't many of them there. The sort of more liberal institutions are well organised because they are organised by capital and the state and civil society in particular ways, and the far right probably gets some sort of effect of that siphoned off. But I don't know about any specifics of differences between how these groups necessarily organise. Unfortunately, that'd have to be something I'd have to do some research into before answered fully. It's easier to fight with the cops than against them, yeah, and that was very, very apparent in that protest. Is that the cops were facing us, Eid Mubarak to all who celebrate. Yeah, the cops were very much on the side of the fascists, looking out rather than looking at the fascists. They kept saying things like, "Oh, we protect you." Folk were shouting, "The cops protect the fascists," and they kept muttering to themselves, "Oh, we're protecting you as well," which was like, are you really though? Because there's like 200 of us, and there's maybe 10 of them. I don't think we're the ones being protected here. Let's change up the tune, and then we'll get back to chatting. That's quite fun. Anyway, I yeah, early 2000s high school film. Yeah, I get that. It's a bit like that. All right, what have we been chatting about? What have we been chatting about since I've been gone? Any big things? Debate is a sport for nerds. Yeah, I get it. Oh yeah, new shooty. Yeah, I enjoyed the new shooty Gatwa stuff. The every time a new shooty Gatwa thing drops, it's just like yes, yes, I think I am a bisexual. Every time a new shooty Gatwa thing is like, I'm like, yep, there it is. Oh, looks like we've got a troll in the chat. I wondered, someone who said that my nose is big and then talked about pooping on the toilet seat. Let's just get rid of that person. My nose is big. It is true. Yeah. Yeah, you're not a good troll if you can't get people to notice you shitting yourself on stream. Let's see if I can catch up on anything. I can't scroll back. There's too much chat. How many folk are in here actually today? 48. That's good showing for me. When I say bi, is it gender blind or not? To be honest, I don't really know. I've not as a sort of debate. I've not really wanted to dive into about whether or not the specific. It's just the specific label for whichever developing sexuality feels right to me at this particular time, and that's all I can say on that matter. All I know is that be bisexual, eat hot chip and lie. Yeah, I mean I do like hot chip. One time we were watching Hot Chip play. Me and my family, Hot Chip were playing a Jules Holland set, and the person playing the bass for them looked exactly like my Uncle David. It was really weird. My Uncle David's a very reserved man, and there he was playing bass for Hot Chip on Jules Holland. I wouldn't have expected it. It was my Uncle David. Yeah, we also saw him on Songs of Praise once. My dad has been on Songs of... oh my god. My dad has become disillusioned with show business and TV because he went on Songs of Praise. He was there. He said he was filming the whole day for Songs of Praise. They did whole sets, and they only showed 2 minutes of his, and all the presenters weren't there, and they were just in this big sort of fucking church and filming the different episodes and different angles from the same church. And he came back. He was like, "I'm so disillusioned with show business these days. It's it's just all fake. Because none of it's actually real." Poor dad. He was quite disillusioned by that. So he's on the anti-show business crowd now that he's done Songs of Praise, and noticed how terrible it was. Just think about how Hot Chip has a real different connotation. Does Hot Chip mean something else not in the UK? I was just aware of the band. I didn't know it had another meaning. He didn't have a diva moment. My dad, he was just like, he was just very, he was just forlorn about it. He was like, oh, it's not. Does my dad actually speak like that? He absolutely does speak like that, yeah. Oh, it's a flaming hot Cheeto. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm anytime I've done my impression of my dad to somebody, and they've been like, your dad doesn't sound like that, does he? And then they've met my dad and they're like, John, your impression of your dad is fucking spot on. It is perfect. It is, yeah, that's his, that's how he sounds.
Oh yes, really, it's all so fake, strange, and
I'm sure like the meme. I'm aware of the meme as well. I identify more with liking the band Hot Chip than eating Cheetos, which to me are disgusting crisps, like a Z tier crisp. But the band Hot Chip, top class. They're in my fucking Spotify liked playlist a lot. The spicy ones are alright. You know. Oh, look up Hot Chip. Hot Chip are fucking great. Electro pop band. They're brilliant. If you like any of the stuff I do on stream, you'll probably like some Hot Chip. Thank you, Entropy. Yeah, stuff I make on stream is, if you like that, you'll probably like Hot Chip. People arguing about debate in the comments, but I've lost the track of what the argument is. But you know, everyone knows my perspective on debate. It's all been quite clear. Like, people are still human and will do things like debate on stage over academics and science and get perpetual grubs against rival researchers. One of my favourite things. I'm going to talk about this actually in a second. I'm going to talk about conference I was at in a second, which was quite disillusioning. Yes, Katie, we're on the same side. But one of my favourite things is sometimes you come across an obscure academic debate between two academics who fucking hate each other. They hate each other so much, and I love the language that they use to sort of try to barely obscure how much they hate each other. They're just like, as such and such well knows, the literature on this is far from settled, and they would do well to reframe from certain absolutist points of views. And then the other person will be like, as such and such well knows that while the literature is never settled, a clear trajectory is. It's just like, oh god, you guys hate each other so fucking much. You should just punch each other. That would solve your problems. Just getting a wee punch up, and then you can, I don't know, chill out with the academic stuff. It would be less pointlessly. That would be less pointless than getting over the fucking the academic shit. So yeah, I enjoy an academic hate thing. It's so funny. But yeah, so last week I was at my first academic conference. I was presenting a paper there. And it was quite a disillusioning experience doing that. It was quite eye-opening going to this academic conference. So I was presenting a paper, which was the reason I was there. It cost to register for one day for this conference £175 at a minimum, because you had to get membership of the organisation and then register on the cheapest form. What was my paper? My paper was on the ways in which human rights are used in social movements. I might actually post it on Patreon. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll post that on Patreon. Not tomorrow, because I've got a new book review on this book coming out tomorrow for patrons. But so I'll maybe post that paper on Patreon next week. It was a bit like a small paper on basically building on some of my sort of PhD research. But yeah, it cost £175 to get in, not counting having to pay for hotels, having to pay for food, having to pay for trains, all that stuff. Hugely expensive. And I was under no illusions that academia is not a great place. But I'd been like, it'll be fun to go and meet people from other universities, and like it's useful for an early career researcher to do this sort of thing. But as soon as you walk into this place, well, first problem was in none of the emails that they'd sent, nowhere on their website of this organisation had they given you any indication. It was at the University of Manchester. They didn't say which building. There was no indication of which building this thing was in. So you had to just sort of figure that out. And I wandered around for a while before spotting the flag of the organisation it was standing outside a building. I was like, okay, that must be it. So that was already like... And what I think they did is they must have assumed that everyone's been here before. Everyone knows where they're going. So there's no real need to tell them. Everyone knows this. It's Manchester University where we have these conferences now and then. Everyone knows where Manchester University conferences are held. So why would we need to tell them? That's what I think. That's what I think happened. Hi Sinan, how's it going? With regard to that. But then as soon as I walked in, it was very clear that it was incredibly cliquey. There wasn't like an opening for someone who was there on their own, which I was, to just chat to people. It was all very like, everyone had their groups. There are people like running and saying hi and everything, which makes sense. You've got friends, you know, you stick around with those friends. But they didn't have much in the way of like networking, early career networking things. I am very looking forward to our D&D thing, Sinan. For those that don't know, me and Sinan, I'll be joining Sinan on his stream in June time, right? To start a D&D thing, which would be very fun. So I turned up and it was all very exclusionary from the get-go. And so I did my presentation. It was fine. Interestingly, I was the only like man in the room, which was fun. June 3rd for the first session of a D&D thing with Eski the Crusader on Twitch, which will be fun. Looking forward to that. Anyway, so first day went ahead and we did that thing. And it came to the plenary, the first plenary event, big address of the president of the society, the association, to the assorted people, which is about 400 people. This big star academic there talking about alternative forms of knowledge production within the university. And and so it turned up, and this person starts giving this talk about, and a lot of the stuff in the talk was like kind of bullshit. They were talking about how, we need global social democracy, and they were talking about how we need to redistribute resource without any mention of production, or how resources are produced, how they're extracted. No real mention of that. But they also started talking about how we need to change how knowledge is produced in the university. And I was sitting at this sort of lecture theatre, 400 people looking down at one singular star academic as she lectured an audience about how we needed to change knowledge production in a room which cost at a minimum £175 to get into, an organisation of which this person was the president. So it felt kind of insulting to be told that by the president of an organisation which I'd had to pay for the privilege to present my labour at, and be told that we need to collectively be doing a better job of changing knowledge production in the university. I was a bit like, what the fuck are you talking about? Should maybe you not be doing this talk then? Should we have abandoned doing this kind of talk? We should have, or what is it? Are you exempt from this? And then as a cherry on top of this, I snuck into the second day because I couldn't afford to pay for another day's registration. I went to 2 days but only paid for one because I literally couldn't afford it. And then the third day, I had a friend of mine, and oh, there's a troll. Oh yeah, hello. My friend was presenting on the third day. Him and another early career researcher, who my supervisor was. Catch you later, Sanan. My supervisor was very supportive of, and so they turned up to their presentation on the last day, and they turned up to their time slot, and nobody was there, not even the chair. And so they went down to check at the reception if the chair had signed in. They'd just fucked off to a different event and left, so nobody knew that the event was happening. And so they were told, just try and get into one of the later, sessions. And so they did, and my friend got to present his paper. But this other early career researcher, it was also her first time attending a conference, didn't get to present. So she'd paid at a minimum £175 just to go to this, event, not including trains, not including hotels, not including food, and then not being able to actually present, had just been essentially scammed out of all of this money. So what sort of alternative knowledge production is at work in this situation? Because it doesn't seem to be very good. And so my supervisor was furious and basically was like, yeah, never again turn up to these sort of things. It's only valuable to get it on your CV to say that you presented at this sociological event because you're trying to get into sociology department, so it's probably valuable. But never do this sort of thing again. It's completely useless. And it was hugely disillusioning for a wide variety of reasons. Those being some of them. I've got other critiques, like I went to maybe 30 talks over the 2 days. I was maybe one of the only people to actually directly cite. Maybe there was me and one other person directly cite Marxism as part of their framework, which for a sociology conference is fucking wild. That's just wild. And that felt kind of intellectually isolating as well. But yeah, there's a real problem there. In sociology. Is this another is this person just coming in and out in different names? My friend who's hanging about, just, do something else with your time. This must be really boring for you. Yeah, it was just hugely disillusioning. How come she wasn't able to present? Because her slot the person who'd supposed to be turning up to her slot had just decided to fuck off. For no reason given. And then there wasn't enough time in other slots. Yeah, the universities are not. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do an academic conference under our current system that is particularly valuable. My supervisors told me that the only valuable ones are very specialist, but otherwise, like, these big ones are probably not helpful at all. I don't think there's a way to do it that doesn't fall into these traps, because they need to pay the university and all these fees, and they're still bound with this very didactic view of education. Presenting for 50 minutes, 5 minutes of questions, presenting for 50 minutes, 5 minutes of questions, presenting, being a star academic and presenting for an hour, and then taking 40 minutes of questions as a star academic, dictating education to the others. It's not disrupting any form of education, any sort of there's no pedagogical innovation there. It's just bullshit in the end of the day. Quite disillusioning. But hey, that's the industry. That's what I'm trying to get into. So that was my last week. Spending a bunch of money to be disillusioned by academia. So much of my life is just spending a lot of money to get disillusioned with academia. Oh well. Let's hope I get a job and then I can get disillusioned even longer, but get paid for it. That'd be nice. Thanks for sticking around, Liz Poltergeist. You're in your own in the postdoc circus, which is its own flavour of disillusioning. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've decided I'm gonna be jumping on the job apps sooner enough. See if there's any postdoc things around. Yeah, because my PhD's pretty much done. My supervisor sent me the first lot of feedback from it and has basically said, I'm not taking a look yet because I have other things to do, but basically said that all the changes that need to be made are very aesthetic, nothing particularly big, so hoping to get that submitted in May. So I'll be joining that circus soon enough, which is fun. Looking forward to that. I would just like a job. I just want a job. It'd be nice. Nice to have a degree of stability. Sounds very hierarchical to me of this event. Yeah, it was. It was extremely hierarchical. Everything about it. Hierarchical, massively exclusionary. Oh, for God's sake, is this person... My God, this person is very keen on watching my streams and commenting. I just don't understand the point of being of like trolling a stream. Would have host a stream of your public defense on Twitter or so. I'd love to tune in. It's not a public defense. The way it works is it's I don't know. Are you in the UK system? Because the defense, my defense will just be myself 2 examiners, a chair, and possibly my supervisor. It's not in public, so it wouldn't be streamed. I mean, I'll post the full PhD once it's done. That's going to be posted on Patreon for sure. And to anyone who wants it, they can get it. So that'll be there. And I think I'll probably end up doing a video about. I'll try and do a full video about the PhD or about the content of the PhD. Sweden, yeah. Sweden, yeah. It's not like Sweden at all. Part of which I'm glad of, but yeah, I've heard basically once you're assumed to have passed when you walk into the public defence. And to be fair, most of the time you're not, like the vast majority of people who do their, like, it's only like 5% I think who ever fail, like outright fail a PhD viva in the UK. It's largely 3 month or 6 month corrections, and a small number who pass with no corrections. So I'm expecting 3 month corrections. I think that's the most likely scenario. Because to be honest, like your supervisor just won't put you forward if you're gonna fail, because it reflects badly on them. I've only heard of one person failing, and it seemed like they were just in a very unlucky situation where their examiner was a real piece of shit. So that's the main thing we're trying to avoid, is getting an examiner who's a bit of a piece of shit. But we'll see. Some just take 45 years to finish it, like my dad. He started his PhD, got a job, finished his thesis in retirement. That's similar to my dad. Although he started one and then ended up, I think he had a bad supervisor and ended up just doing a Masters of Philosophy, and then got a job, and then he did one, he finished his the year before he retired, and he was telling me the other day, he was asked by his examiners what he then wanted to do with the research he produced, and he just said, "I'm retiring," and they apparently weren't very impressed by that answer. But he was a 60-year-old man. He's retiring. I don't know what they expected. Oh my god, yeah. All right. I'm gonna try another tune. I'll have another tune, have another think of things to chat about. Alright, good. Thanks for chilling out with us. How are the examiners chosen? So they're technically supposed to be they're technically supposed to be chosen by the supervisor. So it's supposed to be like, was the UK police force based off colonial repression stuff? Yes, I can answer that in a second. So you're supposed to have one internal and one external examiner, and the supervisor's supposed to know who are good fits for that. My supervisor has asked me if there's anyone particular I wanted, and I gave him a couple of names that sounded good. But my institution is so small. It's part of the University of London, which means that anyone from the University of London can technically be my internal examiner, but it basically means that I'll have 2 external examiners, because it won't be someone within my institution. It'll probably be someone from another University of London school. James is asking, how prepared were you when you started your PhD? Has your topic approach changed much in the process? I'll answer the police question, and then I'll get to that. So whoever it was that was asking about police, yes, the British police force was specifically set up out of the colonial policing in Ireland. It was a very specific, a very like clear and specific process, whereby the Colonial Irish Police Brigade was developed there and then brought over to the UK to break strikes. So, yeah, it was a colonial invention within the UK, colonial policing, and it was spread throughout the colonies as well. That's a very well documented part of police history. You're arguing with your nan, again. Yeah. The End of Policing, I think, talks about that a bit. The Alex Vitale book, which is quite a good resource for talking with people who aren't like liberals, who aren't necessarily into police abolition. Alex Vitale's book is a very good introduction to it for them. Lots of different arguments and your classic things that you can talk about to liberals about it. How prepared was I when I started my PhD? So, how prepared? I had an idea of what I wanted to do. That idea changed significantly over the course of the PhD. So the sort of germinating idea, which was, are human rights useful for social movements? Are they a useful frame at all? That was the nub, the germinating seed of the full thing. But everything else around that has changed significantly, from the conceptualization of what neoliberalism is, to the ways in which human rights are used, to like even the theoretical framework, the social reproductive theoretical framework arrived about 2 years into the thesis. So it changed significantly. I don't know about prepared. I'd done a bunch of reading. I'd done one of the reasons I started this channel was to get back into doing academic sort of writing and research that I'd been out of the game for a little while. And that was a way that I did actually prepare for doing the PhD, was starting this channel, which has, worked out okay. Yeah, lots changed, and I think that's very, very common. I would be amazed if someone told me that they started their PhD with the same ideas that they ended up submitting with it. Some people's changed completely, totally drastically. I'm considering it, but not sure how much I need prepared in advance. I guess it depends. Yeah, so, I mean, the way it works in the UK, is you basically got two streams of doing either applying to a specific or sending a proposal to a specific supervisor. That's what I did. The problem with that is that you can get accepted to that very easily, but then you need to apply for funding, and applying for funding via research councils is very difficult. I didn't get the funding, which is partly why I struggled so much through YouTube stuff. Likely if I'd gone funding, I probably wouldn't have ended up doing this. The second way to do it is sometimes institutions advertise specific posts, research posts, where your research is already funded. You basically paid a salary to do someone else's research. I didn't want to do that because I thought spending 3 years doing research I didn't give a fuck about would be miserable. It would have been nice to be paid a salary though. So you got to balance about which side of that you want. For being prepared, if you're doing the method of approaching someone to talk about it with, a supervisor, if you write out a thesis and like look up, if you've got any other academic contacts or anything else, look up a particular thesis of a topic you'd like to explore, and then send it to a potential supervisor. If they're interested, they'll often work with you to improve it to the stage in which you are ready then to submit a formal proposal. I had a couple of that with my current supervisor, who's just like, yeah, that sounds great, and then another guy
who was like, "Hey, let's have some stuff to work on here." I ended up going with the one who was like, "This sounds great," but lots of them are willing to put in the work and help you. But if you're doing the sort of applying for job stuff, then you should probably be prepared and do the sort of research into the specific field that they want you to be the researcher of, because you'll be interviewed. It's just like applying for a job. So yeah, that's my general advice for that. I assume Kate is saying, I assume your supervisor knows of all the possible internal academics. Sure, let's say yes. Let's say yes to that. He has ideas. That the issue is not just with like who are internal academics; it's who is not a dick. So, for example, for my upgrade from like Masters of Philosophy to PhD, I had to do a sort of mock Viva exam, where two potentials were chosen. One of them probably should have been my Viva examiner for the full thing, but my supervisor didn't know if he would be a dick, because he's never used him before. Turned out he was lovely. He was very encouraging. He was very, very helpful. So he would have been a good choice. But we just didn't know. He was an unknown quantity. So it's more than just like knowing who's good on the topic, but knowing who might be not a dickhead. In the Viva academics, lots of them are dickheads. Lots of them are wankers. Lots of them just fucking want their ego stroked. Let's try to find someone who's not a dickhead and a wanker and who just wants their ego stroked. That's hard. Hello, pancaking on. How are you? Yeah, applying for a research post can be difficult because there's lots of pre-existing applicants, but that's the same with applying for research grant funding as well. I think the only research grant funding that I had access to, there were I think there were like 50 posts available out of like 800 applicants, which is a lot, which is hard, which is why so few people get their funding. I'm sorry, Pancake, and I'm sorry having a shit evening. We're on a chill time here, so we'll try and make it slightly better. All right. This time I am going to make a new tune, and then I'll come back to some new questions.
That was quite fun. Why haven't I started a revolutionary guerrilla garden? Is that like a communal garden where people grow shit? Look, I'm struggling to grow lavender right now, but you know, we can see if someone else has got that strength. Man, roller coaster tycoon. That grow food for the community. I mean, I've got lettuce growing on the balcony. So if anyone wants some lettuce, I don't know if it's edible lettuce. I assume it is. But it's grown. That's been the thing that's grown easiest. The lavender's struggling. I've got chili plants. They're struggling. Even my heather out there is having a hard time. Problem is with growing stuff where I live is like, hello, what's therapy? The air quality around where I live is just terrible. I wish it was the devil's lettuce. If I'm gonna be honest, I could use some of that. Gonna grow any grapes? Might do. Summer's coming up, and you can actually use grapes in an unorthodox way. I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but if you have a glass of wine, and we don't have wine today, we just have tea, but if we did have a glass of wine, and you wanted to cool that wine down, you could take a grape. You didn't even have to grow it yourself, but you could take a grape, freeze it, and then cool the wine without actually diluting it. Unlike ice, which when it melts does dilute the wine, but the frozen grapes can actually help with that. Just a little tip from me to you. Again, we have no wine today; it's only tea. Thank you, What's Therapy. That's very kind. One day, maybe I can get to 200k subscribers and make zero impact. Sell out. That's the dream. It's great. Yeah, you do get a snack as well. We've all seen me when I get slightly drunk on stream try to swallow whole grapes. I've been bullied by chat into almost killing myself by swallowing grapes whole. That's nice. It's better. With your gin and tonic, you can add frozen raspberries, but the problem is the raspberries kind of, it looks nice, but it kind of disintegrates. So you get like just tiny little bits of raspberry stuck in your teeth, which is annoying. But it does look pretty when you add a bit of raspberry to your gin. You could use the same method for iced tea. Unfortunately, I don't like iced tea. If I put frozen grapes in my tea, it would just make it cold, and it wouldn't make it nice, unfortunately. See, that's the thing, the useful thing about grapes. I hope you've all learned something today, because that's what the aim of this channel is. Frozen cherries and iced tea. I can see that being quite good. You do have to like iced tea first. That is true. I remember first time I was in South Carolina. There was like a reception event I was at, and I took what I thought was like a nice, cool, refreshing cola in the hot weather, and it was the sweetest iced tea I've ever tasted in my life, and it was just like, gave me the absolute boke. It was a real shock. It's like when you eat an olive thinking it's a grape, and you're like, oh my god, what's this flavour? I didn't expect this, and I do not like it. And I still don't like olives either. I'm super disenfranchised with lefty YouTubers above a certain sub count. It's super sad and super common to see them lose their cool thing. Shut up, olives are great. No, olives suck. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I understand that. I have had a few instances of being super disenfranchised with some people myself, but it's we have the same problems on YouTube as we do with the general left media sphere, in that we're not accountable to anyone, to be honest. I'm not really accountable to anyone. I could make whatever I wanted. If I decided to stop caring about what I put out, I could probably make some shit. Yeah. Sweet tea is very, very American in that we abuse sweetener beyond all reason. It was just, I couldn't believe it. It was so sweet. I don't take sugar in my tea, so I was like, it was unbelievable. It was a real shock to the system. Who eats olives thinking they're grapes? Children. Children do that, and then they get shocked, and then they develop a full lifetime long aversion to olives, because when they're children, they eat it thinking it's a grape, and they can't get over that shock. Although I do say that the first time I ever tried whiskey was at a New Year party. My parents used to throw New Year parties for all the neighbours every year, and I took what I thought was a big drink of Iron Brew, and it was whiskey. That was a shock, but I do like whiskey now, so maybe if I try again with olives. I keep tricking myself into this. I keep being like, oh, maybe if I try olives again, and then just try olives, and it's like, nah, they're still shit. They still taste bad. I'm sorry. I'm never getting over it. Athena can take her olives back for all I care. Yeah, it was a big drink of whiskey. It was a big old gulp. I thought it was an Iron Brew. I was thirsty. I was like, oh, a lovely big gulp, and it was just straight whiskey. And I remember thinking, what is this flavour? This is not a flavour I've experienced in my brief time on Earth. It's not Iron Brew, I know that for sure. And it was only a few years later that I was like, that was whiskey. That was whiskey, what I was tasting. Wrong colour for Iron Brew, apple juice maybe? No, it was it thought it was Iron Brew. It was, from what I understand, looking back on it, not good whiskey. It was probably like grouse or something. Maybe someone had put something else in it. It definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't Iron Brew though. I'm not even a fan of Iron Brew myself. It's just, I was a child and was like, I need some sweet, sugary drink. Yeah. I mean, I do like whiskey. I like whiskey a lot. My most Scottish coded traits are that I like whiskey and trad music. We're not. I hardly ever drink whiskey, so I've turned into a snob. A fan. I mean, I do like a nice. My favourite whiskey is a Talisker, a lovely smoky Talisker. Really big fan of that. But I'll drink a Famous Grouse as well. I still enjoy it, so I'm not snobby about it. But I do really like a Talisker and a Lafroig. I really like the smoky flavours, the peaty smoky flavours of Talisker and Lafroig. They're good whiskies. And I used to mix gin and Jolly Ranger soda. So the worst. When I was a student, I figured out that if you mixed vodka with Vimto, Vimto, like a really sweet fruit juice, you can get a lot of vodka to very little Vimto. Student life was not the healthiest. Undergraduate student life was not the healthiest time in my life. But the Vimto and vodka mixer was one I went to a lot because of the high mix to high vodka to mixer ratio. Yeah, I have not drank vodka in quite a long time. I'm maturing. I'm a mature person now. My whiskey tastes are the opposite to yours. I mean, I still like. It's not like I don't like. I still like a sweet whiskey now and then, but the smoky taste just get me. I just really like it. Gin and pink lemonade powder. Oh god, that sounds so sweet. Yeah, no, I love a peaty one. I had a really nice Welsh whiskey once that was quite sweet. The worst whiskey I had ever was this one I had in a friend of mine. I was hanging around a friend of mine's brother when I was staying at her house, and he had this whiskey that was distilled in a cider barrel, and it was fucking gross. It was like cider flavored whiskey, and it was like the first taste you were like, okay, that's not bad, and then the more you drank it, you were like, oh my, the way the taste lingered in the back of your throat was truly gross. Hands down the worst whiskey I've ever drunk, and I've drunk some bad whiskies. Japanese whiskey. So my flatmate got a expensive Japanese whiskey recently, really expensive one, and I had a wee taste of it, and it's nice. It is really nice. But I still preferred that Talisker, that PT Talisker, because the Japanese one was like much more on the sweet side, so it wasn't like my preferred taste in whiskey. I still preferred the smoky PT Talisker or Lefroy to that. One time my fucking dad, when I was living with my parents, over the first and second and third lockdowns, I'd gotten some nice whiskey, for my birthday, and then just as like lockdowns were lifting and I was about to move back down to London, me, my mum and my brothers, we went away for a hiking weekend. When I came back, my dad had finished my nice whiskey, and he was like, oh well, don't worry, I'll replace it. And I was like, alright, no worries, take your time. And then he came back a few days later and replaced it with a famous grouse, with a 70 of famous grouse. And I was like, Father, Dad, this is not an equal exchange. That was nice, expensive whiskey, smoky, delicious, that you enjoyed. It was not famous grouse. It was not the whiskey you put in puddings at Christmas time. It was nice whiskey. But the thing is, like, for my dad, he really likes famous grouse. It's one of his favourites. So for him, he was like, oh, I really like this famous grouse, so John will like it as well. Nope. I mean, I'll drink it, but I won't like it.
Yeah, he got me his favourite. It is true. That's true. It was very kind of him. That is what really matters. It's the thought that counts. But it is nice when the thought is accompanied by good whiskey. His hope was probably that he could then drink the grouse too. He did. We shared that grouse. He's a very crafty man. That was what happened. All right. What else have we got to talk about? What else should we chat about? You know what was something to chat about in the last video that was interesting and kind of depressing? Was that, and this comes across in the video. John, someone you're new to the channel or any videos that you'd recommend? Get to that in 1 second. Yeah, so in the video, this video more than any other I've ever done, as I was writing it and filming it and editing it, there was more and more that came out of the news that needed to be added in, either to the writing or to the edit process, more than any other video I've ever done. And not just on transphobic stuff, but on like the interview that Suella Braverman did with Sky News about Pakistani groomer gangs. That she did that like a full week after I'd written this script. She just came out. My mic's fading with the music. Is that any better? Yeah, so that's a bit loud. So this video, yeah, all this stuff was like coming out at the same time, and I've never had to do that before in a video, of like edit and add stuff in at the last second like that. Normally it's like it all happens and then I deal with it. And it was weird because these weren't like, I wasn't dealing with a specific current event which was developing, but like this fast speed nature of like, maybe the fucking fast paced nature of descent into fascism was such that there's always more to be added in at the last second. And I'm sure if I continued to make the video that there'd be more to add in. But yeah, that was fucking weird. And it's a really weird, feeling writing something like the description of the ways in which the right wing have talked about things like Muslim groomer gangs, and describe it in the way that I described it, and then to have a politician come out and then just say it in the exact way is a weird feeling. The Pakistani groomer gangs, my main inroad to hearing that was the Trojan Horse Affair podcast. Yeah, I mean the Trojan Horse Affair podcast. It was that's tweeting in support of that podcast. Talking about it was what led to me being put on that blacklist that Michael Gove, who we all, saw lovingly depicted fucking a dog on my whiteboard. The blacklist that Michael Gove wrote the foreword for. That's how I ended up on that blacklist. Was talking about that that podcast, and talking about the media response to that podcast. What was funny about being put on that blacklist was that the tweets that they'd linked my tweets that they'd linked, and the thing was like, me saying that British media are closing ranks around Islamophobia, protecting themselves. which, in terms of things I've tweeted out, is fucking tame. They could have picked some bad shit, but they went for some tame shit, which I guess is good for me. But yeah, so I think that was a fair presentation, more than fair presentation by the people who made the podcast. It's a very good podcast that you should listen to if you want to hear how fucked British schooling, British education, migration, Islamophobic policies are, and if you want to hear how fucked the British media is for not actually dealing with these issues. See you later, Casey. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, so that I fully support that podcast. Perhaps they didn't pick more because something over the moon. I mean, they didn't pick more because that was all they wanted to talk about. Like, it was just about who was supporting this podcast. Which of these, the way that this blacklist was constructed was to create a narrative that there is to create a narrative that there is a conspiracy of Muslims and academics controlling the narrative on Islamic extremism in the UK. So the vast majority of people who were listed in this thing were Muslim journalists, Muslim academics, and some early career academics like myself, so that they could be like, here is the narrative, here are all these people with the same perspective that this podcast is doing a good job in exposing British media Islamophobia. So that's why they picked those tweets, because it wasn't just they weren't just like, oh, who's left wing. They were who is supporting this podcast and has a position as either Muslim or has a position in academia. Because there are bigger accounts than mine that talked about this podcast but didn't get listed, and that's because they weren't part of. They weren't explicitly on their profile saying that they're, in academia. I think that's the narrative that they were trying to create. It does feel a bit McCarthyite. It does feel a bit like that. It's fucked. Yeah, that was a bit fucked. A bit scary. Hopefully it shouldn't affect. Hopefully it should die down. But it is scary that these people are making these lists. How did I find out I was on the list? I was just looking at it. I was like, who's on this? I was just like, because some of my friends who are Muslim journalists had been like, fuck, I'm on this list. And I was like, oh man, I wonder who else is on it. Wasn't searching for myself because I didn't even consider that I would be on it. I was just looking through it, and I was just like, fuck, that's my name. Yeah, it's a public list. It was in a report about how people are trying to cover up how bad the Trojan Affairs podcast was, and how basically a big Islamophobic report with a foreword by Michael Gove in it. It being public means that the far right has access to things like that, which is the most worrying thing, because they are prone to targeting people they don't like. But I was quite far down that list. There were quite a few people who were on it more than once. The schooling can't be as bad as the US, but I mean, the specific contours of Islamophobia in the UK, that as bad or not as bad isn't a particularly good way to look at it. There are distinct racial logics at play and class logics at play in UK education. So the Prevent Doctrine, for anyone who doesn't know, was an anti-extremism doctrine, which was forced in schools to basically police Muslim students Muslim and anyone who could be construed as Muslim. So lots of Asian, South Asian people get subject to the Prevent doctrine. A friend of mine was referred to Prevent for not challenging a student's Free Palestine badge. He was referred to Prevent as sympathising with terrorists. He's a South Asian man himself. And that basically means that one of his colleagues reported him to the police, basically for that he was a terrorist. That's essentially what that means. He's an extremist. There are stories of children as young as 7 being interviewed by the police, interrogated by the police because their teachers have misheard them saying things like we should give alms to the poor, like ALMS, as in we should give charity to the poor, or talking about terrorists and not terrorists. And these young Muslim or Asian students get picked up and interviewed by the police, often without a parental figure present. And it's not just in school, but it's throughout universities as well. It's a massive disciplinary technology that's used to exclude, racialize, and attack specifically Muslims. And a while back, they found that Prevent was accidentally picking up too many white far-right extremists. So they changed the rules so that it wouldn't pick up those people, so that it would be much more geared specifically towards Islamic extremism. It's hugely fucked. It's one of the things that I mean when I was talking about in that video about Islamophobia being one of the motivators of institutional far-right fascist politics in the UK, because that is embedded within policy. That and a lot of immigration stuff, they're all tied together. And when that's one of the things that gets me really annoyed about stuff on like free speech on campus stuff. Because in the UK, if you talk about free speech on campus in universities and schools and you don't focus on Prevent as the biggest inhibitor of free speech, then you're a fucking joke. You don't know what you're talking about. You're probably massively racist. Because that is probably the single biggest individual policy that inhibits free speech in schools and in campuses. Not just because people get reported to the police, but because of the disciplinary effect it has on Muslim students. There's so much evidence, so much research about Muslim students not actually talking about things that they care about, not talking about their faiths, not talking about anything that they deem controversial, in case they get reported to Prevent, which means being reported to the fucking police. So it's outrageously fucked. So yeah, fuck Prevent. I don't know what got me on that rant. Someone asked me videos that I recommend to watch for coming onto the channel. My favorite videos. I think my favorite video is I have one on neoliberal feminism, which is a video I really like. I think it's a really tight script, and I think it communicates a lot of ideas which are foundational to a lot of the theory stuff that I do in the rest of the channel. So that's one of the ones that I would recommend first of all. I was really pleased with my Pride video, which came out just last month. I thought that was a really good video. Obviously the chicken run one. It's the one that made me. So those three are probably the ones that I'd recommend most. The degrowth one's good. The problem with recommending the degrowth one is the sound issue in that. It makes it difficult to watch for some people. So it's not one if you feel that you can cope with the sound issues of that, then it's worth watching. But it's certainly not one of my. It's not in the ranks of my preferred video essays. I'm big serious. I like when people think I'm serious. The image of me being serious is. I understand how that image gets projected through my YouTube content. It's not something that many people who know me can think about. What's the name of the neoliberal feminism one's called? Making a Girl Boss. That video was one that, if you've ever seen Philosophy Tube's video on where the character Kellyanne Slaughter is in it, that character was inspired by that the Making a Girl Boss video, which was very which was a nice compliment from Abby. The disability one as well, is I'm quite pleased with that one. Thank you. That's very very kind of you. Yeah, I think those are some good ones to get started with. Yeah. The chicken run fully, it fully does the, yeah. I mean, the chicken run is a fully tongue-in-cheek. It's like a half shit post, which is fun. Shall we do, what's the time? 22:31. Let's do one more tune, and then start winding down. I know it's a bit of a shorter stream today. We'll go until 11. 3 hours is a good time, but we'll do one more tune and talk about anything else anyone wants to talk about. If I've forgotten any questions or missed any questions in the chat, let me know.
There we go. That's fun. Do I have an octave pedal? I do. I have both an octave pedal and the synth has a synth bass setting, which is quite fun for some more like the synthwave stuff. But you've got an octave pedal as well. Only goes down, doesn't go up. That's fun. I do like having the bass. That's much better. The drop D, you can't get the nice fun textures if you just use a drop D. I find the octave pedal is very useful. And it wasn't expensive as well. It was only like £30, I think, for the octave, which is pretty good going. I used to, if I had a bigger room, I would, yeah. I don't have an electric bass, no. Have I thought about doing a review or video on Marx and the Anthropocene? I want to read the book. I've been meaning to read the book for ages, but I've not read it, unfortunately. It'd be interesting to read, though. I do want to read that book. I've heard good things. I don't own an electric bass. I would like if I had an electric bass, it would have been cracked out already. Because obviously it's much better to actually use the bass than to use a bass pedal. You can do more with the instrument. Yes, I got a synth. It's called the mono synth, which is quite good. It's got a bunch of fun settings. I've not used it a lot this stream. I'll do one more song after this just to show off the synth stuff. But yeah, the synth is very fun. Yeah, so I wish I had an electric bass. I used to have an electric. I still do have it at my parents' house. My electric drum kit, which followed me around all the tiny student flats I had when I was an undergrad and postgrad. But I wish that would be useful to still to have an actual drum kit, because the drum beats on this loop pedal are fine, but they're not very varied, and I like a decent drum beat. I always want to figure out what those like little coloured like mats that people have, like Marc Rebellier have when he does his like loops. They'd be quite fun. Get some like heavy trap beats going. Yeah, it is the Electro Harmonix mono synth pedal. That is it. Yep, that's exactly it. It's fun. It's a very fun pedal. Yeah. The next thing is like my next instrument or thing that I will buy when I have the money. As I want to get a new mandolin, because my mandolin, which is still at my parents' house, is really bad. It was bought for like 60 quid. I learned how to play on it like 60 quid. And if I had enough money, I'd buy a nice mandolin, and that would be fun to bring into streams, to add a little bit of mandolin into stuff. Way more Scottish trad stuff would come from that. But that's a while away yet. Mandolin for REM covers. Yeah, REM covers are straight up just Scottish country music. Or just like do the synthiest shit possible, and then add a mandolin in there just for fun. Yeah, so I'll seems like we are slowing down in chat. So unless I've missed anything, I don't want to miss anything. Anyone has any particular stuff I want to talk about? I wouldn't have the mandolin with effects. I'd use the microphone and just capture it on the microphone. I think that would still be able to go through the loop? Probably not. But it'd still be quite fun.
So unless anyone's got any burning questions, I'll do a wee play on the do something with the synth pedal for fun, and then call it a night after that. That sounds good. We'll just do something brief on the synth pedal before calling it a night. Thank you, Katie. There we go. So yeah, so you can do lots of fun stuff with the synths. Deliberately very Church's vibes, yeah. Yeah, so we'll call that hiya. You've just caught us at the end. I'm just winding down for the evening. We were just playing about with the synth before deciding to end it there. So thanks everyone for coming along. A more chill stream than normal, less belligerent, I think. But yeah, fun. Cheers. Next stream will be in 2 weeks. Where we'll try and we'll have a wee birthday stream, which will be nice. I'll probably crack open some prosecco or something from that, so that'll be fun. But yeah, cheers, and I hope everyone has a good evening.